So, in the Trump Tower meeting, what he doesn't acknowledge is that while he was defending the right to protest, Trump adamantly defending the Confederacy. The Nazis and the Confederates are two and the same with the KKK in this country. They're two of the same. The people that believe in Confederacy believes in Nazism. They also believe in a Ku Klux Klan. And so Trump, from defending the rights for the Confederacies and the right to defend General Lee, is inadvertently defending white supremacy Nazis in this country. Like I said, this country, under the Ku Klux Klan, that they're the ones that adore the Confederacy. And when you go to Confederate KKK rallies, not only do you see the Confederate flags, but you see the Nazi flags. And so Trump knows what he's doing. He's whistleblowing to his base that believes that the riots that took place in this country, he was whistleblowing to them. He was whistleblowing that Antifas were the one to blame at Charlottesville. In other words, the riots and Antifas uh, were to blame for the civil unrest in this nation. And he was whistleblowing, Trump was whistleblowing, defending the Confederacy. You can't distinguish between the KKK, the Confederacy, and Nazis in this nation. They're one and the same. And so Trump kept on obsessing about defending the Confederate protesters. Instead of defending African Americans protesting against Charlottesville, instead of defending uh, members of Antifa for standing up against Nazis, he decided to attack Black Lives Matter and by attacking Antifa. No, it's because in this country, Antifa came to rise up and defend minorities against Trump's insensitivities towards minorities. So Trump was obsessed about uh, defending confederacies and defending the alt rights in his lobby when he was talking about Charlottesville. And he's trying to make it seem like the Confederacy is separate from Nazism in this nation, and is deceitful for him to do that. Because the Confederacy and the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, and Nazism is two of the same thing. Meaning three of the same things: the Confederate flag, the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, and Nazis. They all protest together. And so for Trump to say, it wasn't the alt right, it was the alt left to blame. There were fine people on both sides. People had permits to protest and defend the General Lee Monument. All that is indirect slight towards black peoples and white peoples that sympathize with blacks. In other words, he took the side of Confederate protesters over the side of African Americans. And then he kept on saying, where would they stop? Meaning black people and white people that sympathize with black peoples. Where would they stop? Would they start taking statues down of Jefferson, Washington? They were slave owners. In other words, Trump is defending the Confederacy in this country and the base that makes up the Confederacy, which is the American Ku Klux Klan. And the Ku Klux Klan, it's one and the same as far as the Nazi parties. Look at World War II. When Hitler was raging in Europe, in Washington there was mass marches by the Ku Klux Klan to support the Nazis in Germany. Trump is not idiotic. He knows that the KKK, the Confederacy, and the Nazi parties are all the same thing in this nation. And so there's no way to explain his way out of it. There's no way to deny his way out of it. He took the side of the Confederacy over the sides of African Americans in Charlottesville when he was in his lobby arguing about there were fine peoples on both sides. There were people there with permits to protest and defend the Confederate monument. And then he might say and lie, say, no, I condemn Nazis. But then again, he's defending the Confederacy. which is in this nation, the root of it is the Ku Klux Klan, which is one and the same with the Nazi parties. So you can't separate them and say they're different. And then he tries to add an excuse. Where would they stop? Meaning black people. Where would they stop? Would they want to erase George Washington monuments? George Washington was slave owners. But would they want to erase Jefferson? He was a slave owner. Where would they stop? And it's not the alt-rights to blame, it's the alt-lefts, meaning black people and white people that sympathize with the movement defending black civil rights in this nation, which are Antifas. And so there's a deep-rooted bigotry in the Trump base. There's a deep-rooted bigotry. And Trump adores and whistleblows to that base of Confederacy in this country, which is inseparable. The Confederate flag, the KKK, and the Nazis are all in the same. They're all in the same as far as their hearts and their beliefs towards racism. And for Trump to take a grand stand and try to separate the Nazi parties from the Confederate protesters in Charlottesville, it doesn't make no sense. Because like I said, look at World War II. When Hitler was rising up in Europe. In Washington, D.C., you remember those mass parades of KKK marchers in Washington, D.C. through Pennsylvania Ave? You had thousands and thousands and thousands. You had seas of white people with white robes, KKK and white hoods on, marching. The KKK, the ones that raised the Confederate flags, they're the ones that raised it, as well as the Nazi flags. And for Trump to try to make it seem, oh, I condemn the Nazis, but I'm whistleblowing towards white supremacy. Because where would they stop? Meaning black lives. In his heart, black lives don't matter that as much as white supremacy. Why would you try to distinguish and separate like it's two different organizations? Like the Confederacy is not have to do nothing with white enslaving blacks. That is not rooted in racism. How can you not say that oh, I condemn the Nazis, and his lobby was saying I condemn the Nazis, but somehow I'm defending the Confederacies or their right to protest to defend that history. And then he got mad. He said, where will they stop? Meaning black people. Where will they stop? Would they want to take away George Washington monuments? George Washington was a slave owner. And then it started coming out with cancel culture, critical race theory. But Trump took a strong stance towards defending the Confederacy in this nation. The same for Trump Jr., saying for the Kentucky Confederate flag, I don't see what the big hoopla was about. It's part of a proud tradition. There's nothing wrong with proud traditions. They get obsessed. Trump kept on bragging about General Lee, General Lee, General Lee at all his rallies after Charlottesville. And then kept on bragging about how African Americans for kneeling are unpatriotic son of a bitches and they're disrespecting the flag. But yet again, this guy, President of the United States, is having a love affair with the Confederacy and the base that supports it, which is his base. You can't distinguish between the Confederate flag, the KKK, and the Nazi parties in this nation because they're all in the same. There's no way for him for his what happened, his true nature that particular day when he was in his lobby debating about the alt-rights. His true nature started coming out. I don't know if the reporters were bogging him down with questions and he got flustered and he started coming out with his true emotions. They will find people. They have permits. They there to defend the monuments. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong. General Lee was a great general. His true emotions started coming out. And I guess his advisors, after a while going out to his rallies adoring General Lee, his advisors started saying, "Hey, cut it down. Come up with critical race theory. Come up with cancel culture. Say, where would it stop? Would it be Washington monuments? Would it be Lincoln monuments?" In other words, he's telling the black people, "I'm defending in Charlottesville the right for white Confederates to defend their monuments in this nation, and I will not let black people take away Confederate monuments in this nation." And in order to substantiate and not make it seem like he's a racist, he started to add General Lee monuments. Washington, where would it stop? Me again, turning back on the African Americans in this nation, saying, y'all will never be satisfied. In other words, if we take away General Lee, then y'all will want to take away Washington and Lincoln. Y'all will never be satisfied. So he's arguing on behalf of the Confederacy and defending the symbolisms of the Confederacy, which is the American Ku Klux Klan, that are the ancestors of those slave owners, that in hand they march with the Nazis. And to have an American president to say African Americans for kneeling and praying for civil rights awareness when the national anthem is being played, that somehow they're unpatriotic son of a bitches. But yet again, the chief and commander having an adornment, a love affair with the Confederate flag and the Confederate monuments, to me, that's more unpatriotic than any son of a bitch can ever be as chief and commander.